Why English is so hard for Spanish speakers. This is a very interesting topic because it actually covers almost every element that we have discussed in class this semester. And it's very interesting to see not just the subtle differences in between the languages, but there's actually vast differences within pronunciation, amongst other things, which will be discussed. To start off, we want to look at the alphabet because that's forming sound and everything is part of making sentences, part of making words, part of communicating, and it's very important. And an interesting thing is that most Spanish speakers don't have issues with the majority of the alphabet because many of the consonants make the same sound. However, there is one interesting example where this doesn't apply when a word typically starts with an S. That doesn't happen a lot in Spanish, and it tends to make the S sound, which makes it seem different to Spanish speakers. So it's like a funny example would be like stop would be a stop, or like school would be a school. Now, once we look at vowels, however, it's very different because Spanish only has 5 pure vowels and 5 diphthongs. And this is very different than English because English has 12 pure vowel sounds and 8 diphthongs. And the length of the vowel plays a very crucial role in the English language, and it's not so much within the Spanish language. For example, English differentiates between the short and long vowel sound, whereas in Spanish they do not. Another important factor is that the Spanish language only has 3 double letter combinations, but when compared to English, there can be 5 times as many, which makes it very interesting when trying to spell certain words, such as the example hopping versus hoping, and trying to understand the difference between the two. This is one of the interesting examples, the hopping versus hoping, because many times new English learners will often double letters that were supposed to be single letters, or overcompensate by doubling a letter that was completely unnecessary. One thing that comes up frequently is the differences in spelling and how hard it can be for Spanish speakers because Spanish speakers have a strong correspondence between the sound of a word and its spelling, whereas in English we don't, and that irregularity makes it very hard for Spanish speakers to learn English. When we have words such as though, which has silent sounds, it can be very confusing for Spanish speakers because when a Spanish speaker will hear a new word, they will write the word as it sounds, which is a problem. Another problem can be that the Spanish language and suffixes and prefixes, which English has a plentiful amount of, such as un, over, ness, full, things like this, as well as another example with word pronunciation is that we have contractions, which can be, they don't seem difficult to us, but it can be very difficult to ESL. Another very interesting example between English and Spanish is the use of plurality. Because in Spanish, there are certain words that represent more than one person, like la gente is people, and todo is like everyone. But when you have a word like la gente, it can be confusing when you try to say people because you'd make a sentence form that would sound like the people are doing something instead of people are doing something by using an article, even though it's not a singular being. Now, with English, some plural words do not sound alike at all with their singular form, such as child and children, which can be very difficult for Spanish speakers to pronounce and say. Now, with grammar, you will find the most notable difference, in my opinion, between Spanish and English because Spanish is a more heavily inflected language than English, even though they're very close grammar wise. Both of them follow the SVO subject verb object. However, In Spanish, there's much more flexibility than there is in English. And generally, you can find it that Spanish speakers will place a crucial word at the end of the sentence that they were supposed to make important, and it becomes apparent when speaking. Now, here are some examples of where grammar is important with sentence structure, uh, and this is typically how Spanish speakers would say it. Do you have sister instead of do you have a sister? It's not easy learn English. Where's my pencil? Have you seen him? I am more tall than my brother. Was snowing when I got up. I just want to thank everyone who took the time to watch the full presentation, and thank you, and I hope you have a grander appreciation for how hard English can be if you seem to be struggling with your foreign language, and that a foreign language doesn't necessarily come easy for anyone. And I will leave everyone with one of my favorite quotes that involves culture and how we live our lives.